Good evening, everybody. My name is Tzvi Werther, and this is another installment of the FAQs, the frequently asked questions, the evening sessions that we do every once in a while. The purpose of this kind of gathering is for people to ask whatever questions that they have. Often they're frequently asked. So it's really easy for me, but sometimes not. And I love getting stumped. So we'll figure things out together. We titled tonight's call "Always Connected, Always True," and we can talk about that. But most of all, I just want to make sure that all of you have an opportunity to. I want you all to know that you have an opportunity to ask your questions and to make your contributions. I really want this. I want this hour and a half, however long this goes here tonight, to be as valuable as possible. So don't hesitate to interrupt me or to bring up a topic or to ask a question that's been on your mind. I have it on good authority that on tonight's call there might be one or two or more people that have actually never heard about innate health or the principles in a kind of laid out in in bullet form, where with definitions and what things are. So I thought I'd just spend a few minutes going over on what innate health is, define innate health, and define the three principles as best I know how. However, before we start doing that, one of the things that's been emerging more and more for me with my clients and one-on-ones with my friends and my colleagues is that I want to be as clear as possible about how people find benefit through the three principles. And I'm going to list off a bunch of ways where they're not beneficial. So the three principles are not beneficial because there's wonderful teachers like me who articulate the principles in a heartfelt and as true a manner as they can. That's not what gives people relief and insight. It's not books. It's not videos. It's not even your focused, effortful attention towards figuring out the concepts and ideas that we'll be pointing to today. Ultimately, at the end of the day, nobody can find benefit from the principles until they are insightfully realized, which means that you have to wake up to them. They have to be realized and known to you through your own mind. And that's the only way it's going to happen. And then when it happens that way, it's yours, it's real. No one can take it away from you. You won't need to write it down. You may want to write it down, but you won't need to. It'll be genuine and authentic. Now, often in having these conversations, people begin to get insights. But because they happen at these types of gatherings or at our seminars or classes, some people mistakenly attribute those insights showing up to them to the fact that they've come to a seminar or listened to a speaker. That simply isn't true. As the principles will reveal, all of reality, including the things that you know and wake up to, only occurred to a person one way, insightfully via the principles. So here we go. So innate health. What is innate health and why are people interested in it? Well, it used to be people thought that innate health meant that you would become innately healthy if you learned about innate health. But that's really not at all what innate health means, or that's not what the term was pointing to. Innate health is actually just another word to describe the truth about how human beings exist and experience life. And the system that affords for you and me and all of us to have our moment-to-moment experience of life is innate and it's healthy. So whatever that system is, there are two adjectives that we use to describe it. There are many, many adjectives used to describe the system, and that's what we're going to be doing all evening on the call, is simply describing the truth about how human beings get to be alive and experience life. But the two terms is that system that allows for you to do that and allows for me to do it, allows for everyone to do it, is innate. You're born with it. It's a system that preceded you. It can't be taken away from you. It's not something you develop. It's not something you work on. It's not something that you have to learn to do. The system, the fact that we feel thinking, is innate. We're all doing it right now. We were doing it since the moment we're born, and we all will be doing it till the moment we pass. And so that system is it's a constant system. It's innate. And there's really nothing you need to do to speed it up or slow it down. You couldn't if you tried. It just works. We feel thought, and it's a healthy system. It's a system that never breaks down. So if you had a computer, a healthy computer will play whatever program you put in it. Computers, though, break and they become unhealthy. The system breaks down, maybe a wire tears, or maybe some virus gets in there, and it prevents the system from doing its job in the computer world. That can happen. Computers break, and it doesn't allow for programs to run smoothly. Whereas in the system that we're talking about, with how human beings become are allowed to or are capable of experiencing life, that system never, ever, ever breaks. It's always healthy. It's always vibrant. It's always working. It's working for me healthily, and it's working for you healthily. It doesn't make a difference if you're feeling miserable. It's still working in a healthy way. It's still operating properly. It's doing its job. And whether you're feeling wonderful, it's also still doing its job. It doesn't make a difference if you're smart or not so smart. It really it doesn't make a difference what your reality is. Whatever your reality is, it is perfectly coming through this healthy system that allows you to experience thought in the moment. And that's the term innate health. I hope that's helpful, but we'll just kind of give a summary on that. Innate health is a term used to describe the innate and healthy system through which all human beings always were, are, and always will be experiencing life. Does anyone have any questions about the term innate health? Again, the majority of the people on the call this evening or the webinar are on the phone. I think you can press *6 to unmute yourself if you've got something that you want to ask or contribute. But we can move on to... Oh,
very clearly said.
Okay, great. That was
very, very clear.
Thank you for saying that. I would just like to pause and say a little bit more about this, why I'm defining it this way, or why it's important that I'm defining it this way. The majority of the people that I come across who begin looking at innate health or exploring innate health and the principles do so because they're looking to fix something. They're looking to change something in their lives, make something better, make something more efficient, to do something to improve their lives. They may be trying to eliminate certain behaviors or take on certain behaviors. They may be trying to get rid of certain types of thinking or adopt certain types of thinking. The vast majority, and myself included when I got into the principles, of people are really focused on making life better. Now, recently I had a conversation with a client of mine, and one of the things that really struck her was that it never occurred to her that she never really had a definition or a theory, that she never really spent time thinking about how is it that human beings come to experience life. Now, the reason why that's important is because we're all in life. We're all experiencing realities of one kind or another. Usually, people who are not very happy with the reality they currently have are seeking for ways to change it and make it move along, or do something different. And it doesn't occur to them that maybe before we start messing around with what the engine is creating, that we should spend some time focusing on, well, how does the engine even work? What is the engine? I don't even know. So that there are people who are walking around, myself included, was walking around with some innocently created theories or beliefs that we just kind of assumed were true and didn't really give it a second thought about how I came to feel this way. And those theories, unbeknownst to us, were actually false. So that anything that we were doing in the world of trying to change our experiences was built upon a false premise about how they got there in the first place. So as opposed to giving people ideas about how to fix their lives, innate health is very, very specific about re-examining how is it that we understand how we came to feel anything in the first place. And the really fascinating thing is that it gets really, really simple as you begin to explore innate health, at least when you compare it to the great many theories that we all hold, or that professional psychologists and psychiatrists and sociologists and all the entire mental health field or the business world operates. They operate on certain principles that include many, 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 many factors about how human beings come to experience life. There are many things to take into account. There are many things there are many inputs. There are many things that have a say in how you came to feel, how you happen to feel right now. And based on those many different possible things, we need to account for all of them and respond to them in kind. Whereas the principles narrow it down to one thing. And that's really the conversation about the three principles, or the conversation about innate health, is not a conversation about what you should do in your life. It's not about what you should think to yourself, or what you should tell yourself, or some way to think about things or reframe things, or how to think more positively. Although those might be some wonderful things to do, it is outside the conversation of innate health. The power of having a conversation about the principles is actually re-examining the foundation behind all of life, how we understand how any human being comes to feel whatever they feel in a moment or experience in a moment. So with that being said, I no longer say to people, oh, I'm not in my health today, or today I'm innately healthy. Well, based on the definition that I gave you previously, that really doesn't make any sense. The system is always healthy. The system is always innate. What changes is how I happen to be feeling in the moment. The reality that I have in the moment is always changing. Yours is always changing. But the system that affords for all reality, any reality, is always the same system. It's always working through the same elements. And simply by learning those elements and kind of narrowing it down to this one single paradigm through which all reality is created is a huge help for people, because what it does is it takes off your mind all the false beliefs about all the different factors that we used to think had a lot to do with how we felt. We used to think that many, many, many different factors are responsible for how I came to feel how I feel today. It might be the classical one is my childhood. There are many, many theories built on that one. Another might have to do with, as ridiculous as it sounds, is the weather, or we've been told that studies have showed that marriages really suffer when there are financial problems. It's the number one surveyed response as to what led to divorce or marital discord. And so we've kind of accepted as, financial issues is a cause for marital discord. And we just kind of have bought into that, innocently bought into the cause and effect of finances and bliss or happiness in marriage. And the principles actually reveal that as this list grows and goes on, and I could go on for a long time about all the things that I've just made up about what I used to think were responsible for my feeling in the moment, the principles come along and remove all of those things that we thought had the power to create a feeling and exposes them as having no power. And the way it does that is by you realizing the single way that we come to feel anything. By default, you'll see that there's nothing else. When you realize it's just one thing, automatically, everything else gets eliminated. Not because you have to work on it, it's just logic. And it won't be something that you need to kind of tell yourself or convince yourself. When you insightfully realize the three principles are the only system that bring you all experience, you will automatically know, or it will automatically be revealed to you that there is no other factor. There are no other catalysts. Okay, I went a little long on that. But the three principles, sorry to disappoint you, are only a metaphor. They're not the real thing. The real thing can only be realized. The truth about how you I come to experience life is actually not perfectly describable. It never will be, never was. But the principles are a metaphor that help point us towards that truth. So don't try to sink your mind into the definitions that I'm giving you or try to kind of analytically understand what I'm saying. You might comprehend everything that I'm saying and still not realize the truth, because there's a truth behind the metaphor of the three principles. And instead, I ask you, as quoting the Sid Banks, is look beyond the word, look beyond what I'm saying, and see what's what's insightfully coming into your mind about what might be true. And it may altogether be very possible that nothing is occurring to you, that there's nothing insightfully coming through. And that's okay too. Just hang out with us. I think you'll have a nice time. So the three principles metaphor is mind, consciousness, and thought. They are words, three words, referring to three elements three powers that create or afford the ability for human beings to experience life. Mind is not brain. Mind is not your mind. Mind is God mind. Mind is the intelligence behind all of life. It's the intelligence or the formless energy which precedes creation itself. Now, the last I checked, human beings cannot comprehend or can't what's the word I'm looking for? In Hebrew, the word is tefisa, to be typhus. Comprehend, I think, is the right word. But we really cannot comprehend in our minds something that has no beginning, has no end, has no shape, has no form, is before time, space, and matter. These are things that our brains are not wired to really wrap our minds around. However, although we cannot come to point at it and say, there it is, to a degree we can comprehend that it exists, that it's there. And this is the great nothing that precedes time, space, and matter and creation itself, from whence time, space, and matter actually comes from. And one of the things that are in time, space, and matter is your personal experience of life at any given moment. And that too is created from this great nothingness. Nothing can exist unless it comes from that great nothingness. So in essence, what we're saying is that there's some power that precedes form itself, precedes creation itself, precedes your life, precedes you. It's not something that you can wrap your arms around or your brain around. It's something that we're getting aligned with, though, as true. And that's the first thing that must be present. It must be that if something exists in this world, that it was created by, is suffused with, and sustained by this formless energy from before life. And how does it transform itself into form, into your reality that you now see? Well, that's where the other two elements come into play, and that's the element of consciousness, the very fact that you are alive, that you can experience things. It's kind of like the computer is on, you're awake. And that's the principle of consciousness. It's not something that you control. It's not something that I'm saying that you can make better or worse. It's just a fact. People are either alive or they're dead. As Valda Monroe likes to put it, because I see there are a lot of ladies on the call, either someone is pregnant or they're not pregnant. There's no a little bit. So consciousness is just, it's something that's on or off. But without it, if it's off, it's impossible to have an experience of life. So the principle of mind gifted us all with consciousness, that we're awake and alive. I may be making this sound complicated, but it's actually very, very simple. The fact that we're alive is not a very difficult thing to kind of wrap your head around. It is very simple to see, though, that without it, you can't have an experience. So it is a fundamental element that's necessary. Now, the other element that's necessary is, or the way the formless energy of life gets transformed into your specific scenario, is via the power of thought. And what the power of thought does is it takes thinking and it brings it to life into your consciousness so that you can experience it. These three elements work simultaneously. If you discover one, you discover the other. They're kind of three that are one, but they're a single system that affords for each of us whatever we happen to be experiencing in the moment. So the power of thought will bring whatever thinking you have. Well, the power of thought will bring thought to life for you. And that if you weren't having thought of some kind, it could not exist for you. Because the only thing that you're conscious of is thought, at least within the principles of understanding. I'm not asking anyone here to agree or disagree, and I'm actually not interested in arguing about it. But for those who are interested in learning about the principles, I'm digressing here for a moment, I'm just kind of laying it out. And if you want to understand more, so by all means ask, and I'll try to point some more. Now, those are the three principles: mind, consciousness, and thought. Remove any one of those elements and you've got a big fat zero on your screen. Nothing. You wouldn't even know that you exist without mind, consciousness, and thought. Bringing thought to life for you that you exist. Let alone the things that you know, or the things that you see, or the feelings that you have, or the attitude that you have, or the state of mind that you're in, all of it. Whatever it is, reality is post the three principles. The three principles have created it. Or another way to say it is, your reality is thought in the moment. There's an inseparable connection between what you feel and experience and thought. It's almost like they're two sides of the same coin. It's all God energy manifesting itself via thought into the experience you now see. Now, what's really, really powerful about this, when you can see it, is that if this is true, if you can see this, what will get revealed to you is all the things that do not have the power to give you experience. And we started listing some of them before. But here are some classical ones that people have a really difficult time with. Love. A lot of people are convinced that feelings of love are created by, if you love somebody, well, that person is making you feel love. And the evidence is that before I met that person, I didn't feel love. And I met that person, I felt love. And so there's a conclusion made that people allow you or give you the ability to feel love. The principles call that out as an illusion. That's false. It's not true. And in essence, it actually works the other way around. Is that every time you're feeling love towards someone, it's actually being created from the inside or from within the three principles. And it's being experienced on the outside. The illusion is that the outside is allowing you to feel love. The truth is that the outside cannot, does not, will not create love in you. When you're experiencing love, it's actually showing up through you and then going out into the world, not the other way around. And the same thing applies to every single emotion in the book. It's impossible to know this or keep this in mind all the time. Why, just today, many, many times throughout the day, I was visited with feelings that I treated as if, when felt as if they were coming from outside of me and then hitting me. And I was almost forced to experience them. But as we delve into the principles as a community, as individuals, as groups, as families, we're more and more getting reminded or being given the ability to see through that illusion, getting humble about our moment-to-moment emotions, and being able to see that our emotions are being created from within ourselves via the principles, which would be incredibly helpful for anyone who's blaming some really uncomfortable feelings on the world around them. Learning or waking up to the fact that it simply doesn't work that way actually creates a brand new avenue for evolution, for change, for a better feeling that does not include you having to wait for other people to be different than the way that they are. In fact, you don't even have to wait for you to be different than the way that you are. So that's innate health. Those are the three principles. I've blabbed now for 20-something minutes. Anybody have anything that they want to add or contribute? If you're on the phone, press *6. If you're on the computer, let's see who's here. People on the phone, I only see numbers. So I don't know who you are, but we got on the computer, Leora, Sarah, Deborah. So for those of you who called in a little bit late and missed the intro, the purpose of this session is that it should be relevant and helpful for you. And it's really difficult to know what to tell you unless I hear from you. So if there's anything that I've said that you find confusing or you want clarification,
I didn't understand exactly what were you trying to explain about the love and people give you the ability to love.
Okay. And you want to give me a little bit more, broaden that a little bit? Maybe what you didn't understand about it?
Just to explain again what you were trying to say.
Okay. I'll try. I'm gonna mute you now as I talk, and then you can unmute yourself again. Okay? If you want to speak up.
Okay.
All right. Well, let's lay out a scenario. It's not a very complicated scenario. You're feeling love. You're feeling love towards someone. I don't know how that might specifically feel for you, but some adjectives that might come to mind are, you feel like you want to give to someone, you want to encourage them, you want to support them, you want to see them do well. It shows up as a deep feeling of connection, maybe just a desire to be around that person, to have that person in your life. Now that feeling, however it might show up for you, whether it's towards a child, a spouse, a family member, a friend, the world, pre-principles, or me pre-principles, was quite convinced that that feeling can only show up in specific instances when I'm with specific types of people who are a specific type, or acting a specific way. In essence, my understanding of love is that it comes from another person showing up in my life. I get to experience that person that way, or I get to experience that feeling of love when that person enters into my life. That person being in my life affords me the ability to love them. They're almost doing it to me. Maybe I'm oversimplifying it, but I think we can all think of instances where we felt that we couldn't really love someone because they were a certain way. They were acting a certain way, saying certain things, and that somewhere in our minds, if we looked really carefully, we'd find a statement of, I can't love you right now because of the way that you are. And that if you are a different way, well, then I can love you. And underneath that statement is, you give me the ability, or the love within me, that feeling of love and all that comes with it, is really starting with you, the object of my love. And the principles reveal that although love does come and go, it doesn't come and go as the result of people being the way that they are. It comes as the result of an inner process that comes and goes within us, that's completely independent of the people in our life or the place that we are. And that what emerges is actually the true definition of unconditional love. The true definition of unconditional love, in my mind, is not that I'm going to love you no matter what. I think that's impossible. Either you have love in your heart or you don't. And that comes and goes. I don't think anyone can feel love 24/7. I mean, I haven't met someone that does. That's theoretically possible. But unconditional love is that my love, when it's here, is not here because of a condition from the outside. It's not here because some conditions were met by you. That's not what allows me to feel love. My love, when it's here, is actually showing up unconditionally with regards to my circumstances. The truth of how we experience life reveals that the potential to feel love is actually always present, no matter who you're with, what they've done to you, or what's going on, or your past. I'm not saying you should feel love all the time, no matter what. I'm saying that the potential for love is constant and unconditional, not limited by the circumstances of life. It doesn't mean you're going to feel love all the time. It certainly doesn't mean that you can manufacture it on demand. But it does take off your mind the idea that someone has to be a specific way in order for you to be able to have a feeling of love towards them. Does that help clarify at all? 6877. Just press *6 again to unmute yourself.
Yes, thanks.
Okay. We do have a question from the chat. And the question posed is mind like the soul? And my answer is I don't know. I really don't know what the soul is. I don't know what its dimensions are, or the only clue that I have about the soul is that it is of a godly essence, and that doesn't help much in understanding what the soul is. But probably, whatever the soul is, it came from what the word mind is referring to. This incomprehensible, infinite power that precedes creation itself. So if I have a soul and it's godly, it comes from there. The soul would be just a little bit, if so to speak, of mind. Even though mind can't be broken up into smaller parts, the kaviyachol, as we say in Hebrew, so to speak, soul is a piece of mind. But mind can't be broken down into pieces. It's absolutely unified. Universal mind, as it's called, is referring to an energy that not only precedes life, but is all of life itself and has no parts. I know that might not be very helpful, but that's the best I got for the question of, is mind like soul? 2540, you are unmuted. Do you have a question? Okay, I guess not. With regards to whether mind is like soul or not, it's an interesting question, but I don't know that it's particularly important with regards to how it is that insightfully realizing the truth of the principles paradigm is going to be helpful for someone. And again, I can't repeat this enough. The power of insightfully realizing the paradigm of mind, consciousness, and thought is that it will remove from your mind a bunch of things that you used to believe were true. So just as a metaphor to that, I like this metaphor. I use it way too much, and some of you have probably heard it already. But they used to believe that the world was flat, and that presented a whole bunch of problems. Then it dawned on someone, somehow, they woke up to and insightfully realized the world ain't flat. It's round. And that removed a whole bunch of problems. That's what the principles do. Via insight, a whole bunch of problems that we thought were problems get revealed as, oh, those aren't really problems because it's just not true. So this wouldn't be a technique, so to speak, that you could do. You can't make yourself have insight, but insight occurs throughout history. People have insight. You have insight. You don't know where your keys are, and then you realize where they are, and that takes care of how you're going to get to the party. The insights can happen on very, very mundane levels, and they can happen on huge levels. Having insight about how life itself works is the most leveraged insight you could have, because you're in life 24/7, and that's what the principles are about. So it kind of has another way to kind of differentiate between pre-insight about the principles and post-insight. So pre-insight, before I know the principles are true, I'll make a bunch of statements like, you're making me feel this way. I can't be happy in this town. I'll never be able to get over this. There's no I have no value. These types of statements, or I'll never be happy, or I'll never really function properly because such and such happened in my past. Those are all statements or trajectories of life that we take based on a false premise that something other than thought in the moment creates your feeling. Post insight about the principles, all those statements are actually revealed as false. There is nothing in the past that is creating your feeling today or limiting you from the full spectrum of all experience, from the darkest depths to the loftiest joys. There's nothing that can limit that. The fact that there used to be scenarios that you'd want to avoid because you just know already how you're going to feel before you even get there. Well, that type of self-talk begins to die down just because you know it's not true. You never really know how you're going to feel about at any given moment until that moment arrives. And because how you're going to feel in that moment is not dictated by where you are or who you are or who you're with, the trajectory of life post paradigm insight is one of more and more just kind of being curious to find out how you end up being more curious about, I wonder how this is going to turn out, as opposed to making statements about, I know how it's going to turn out. Because the principles reveal that we really don't know. Nobody knows what they're going to be feeling at any moment, because no one knows what they're going to necessarily be thinking at any moment. And that's the only factor that determines what you're going to be experiencing when that moment arrives. So one of the implications of this truth, this inseparable connection between thought and feeling as it flows through in this moment, is that when thinking about the future, and you're welcome to think about the future even after you realize the principles, but as you ruminate and think about the future and how things are going to turn out, maybe, you're never really going to be able to decide anymore how it's going to turn out. It's not to say that sometimes I don't predict that it's going to be a certain way, so I avoid a certain situation. But ultimately, nobody knows for sure, for certain, what they're going to be feeling at any moment. And again, that's an independent variable that is not limited by who you're with or where you are. And so what the principles do actually is that they begin to surprise you, where just by getting a glimpse of this truth, what starts to happen is there are certain scenarios. Now, this is what's happened for me and a lot of my clients, a lot of my colleagues that have explored this, is that there are certain scenarios that historically, certain family members, let's say, that historically have, every time we have an interaction with them, it kind of feels a certain way. And what starts to emerge is almost by surprise, we start having the same interactions with the same people, with the same content, but we're surprised by a new feeling. That's what the principles do for people. It surprises us. It's not something that we start manufacturing the feelings that we want. They start surprising us. I don't know if that's helpful, but that's what's coming to mind.
Hi, I wanted to comment about the unconditional love.
Okay.
Do you mean that we have the potential to feel unconditional love at any time? What blocks us from that is, let's say, like our thoughts, which could be primarily due to our ego. And once we have awareness that we're thinking certain things because we have certain expectations, which, oh, that's why I'm thinking that, then once you could kind of reset, then you can kind of be privy to the unconditional love. Is that sort of like what you mean?
Well, I couldn't make out every single word that you said, but the feeling I got was that no, not at all. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm not saying that it's something that you can do. I'm not giving someone a kind of a technique about how to feel love unconditionally. I am saying that the fact is that if you are feeling love, it's showing up for you without condition, without anything to do with the outside world. And that's a fact. I'm not saying that you can create and manufacture love on demand. I am saying that if love is there, it's occurring unconditionally. It's occurring through thought in the moment. It is not occurring through the conditions of the world you live in. Does that clarify?
Can you hear me any clearer now?
A little bit. Go ahead.
Okay. So are you saying that it's not up to us how much love we feel, and certain people could feel love more of the time than others, and that's fine, and it doesn't have to do with anything except for them, and just accept it?
Well, that's a good question.
Thanks.
I am not sure to what degree we are involved in the love that we get to experience. Meaning, let's say you don't feel any love, but your mom told you that you love what you give to, so you start giving. And then suddenly love shows up. So does that mean that the fact that you gave to that person created the feeling of love? The principles say no. Does that mean that you should not give to that person? The principles say no comment. The principles will don't have a comment about what you should or shouldn't do, or how much you're involved in the eliciting love from the principles. But at the end of the day, the principles are very clear that no matter how much you give to somebody, a feeling of love must come via mind, thought, and consciousness. The act of giving does not have the power to create love in you. Now, exactly what or how much you should be doing, or to kind of, I don't know, point yourself towards, or ask for feelings of love, or through prayer, or whatever it is that you think you should be doing, that's different for everyone. But no matter what you're doing or what your involvement is in the pursuit of love, at the end of the day, a genuine, authentic feeling of love can only emerge via the thought-feeling connection. Without thought, you won't feel it.
So basically, are you saying that we create our own love? Because it has to come through our thinking.
Also, good question. We is a loaded word. So if you mean we willfully, if you mean I did it, no, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that if love is showing up, it's showing up through me via the principles. It's not coming at me from the world around me.
Yeah, so then it is you creating it then. It's your experience through your own thinking. So no one else is involved but yourself.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, except that if someone hears in that statement the idea that you're responsible for it to the extent that you made it happen through your own power, no, then I would not agree with that.
But we learn that the word to love in Hebrew is the giving.
Sure, that's how love manifests itself as giving.
But you're saying that it can't come through the giving; it's coming through thought in the moment through you.
Correct.
So it sounds like it's very complex then.
Oh, it might sound complex. I agree. Until you, it's very complex to use a camcorder. So I ask someone, can you set up the camcorder for me? It's really very simple. The truth is, it's simple once you know how to work it. Before that, it's as complicated as calculus. So it's the same thing here.
But we're taught that when you want to love someone, you give to them because then you see yourself in that person.
Okay. So,
can I say something the way I see it?
Well, give me just 1 second, and then I'll just want to give a quick answer here. The truth is that you're welcome to have any opinion you want about how it works, but the principles are very clear in their statement. Seeing the truth about how it works is very rigid and unyielding. All human experience comes through this system and is not created by the outside, not by objects, not by people, not by action. And although that might seem very outlandish, and I'm totally with you, that might sound and seem outlandish, but I'm not asking you to agree. I'm just asking you to hear that that's the statement the principles are making. And that's kind of, that's all we can do here. At least you can hear that that's the statement that's being made. But go ahead. Someone on the line wanted to make their own, maybe a better answer?
No, not a better answer. Just the way I see it, the way I see it. So basically, I think what you're saying is that love is if you give, you can give, but the actual love is coming from mind and then through thought, meaning from Hashem, and then you just feel love. Just like when you do ishtadlus for something, it's not the ishtadlus that's helping you out, it's Hashem it has no connection. We just do what we do. In the same way, giving can be an act of giving, but the love is actually still coming from Hashem. Am I right?
I don't know if you're right, but I agree with you.
I'm saying, do I make sense?
It makes sense to me. Just for those on the line that don't understand what hishtadlus means, in Hebrew, hishtadlus means personal effort. I really like what you're saying. I think that hishtadlus, which is put on a pedestal in Judaism, is actually widely misunderstood. So you'll ask people, do you believe that God makes everything go? And they'll say, oh, yes, certainly God is the one that decides whether things work out or not. So you ask them, well, then why are you doing anything? Just, sit at home and put your feet up. Oh, well, I have to do my hishtadlus. I have to put in my effort. And that's basically the way the conversation goes and ends. But a real comprehension of the place or the understanding as to why we put effort in at all is actually not very widely understood. It's probably very misunderstood. And if you look at people, myself included a lot of the time, you find that when they're putting their effort in, they do it in a way that seems to ignore that God actually decides the outcome. People get stressed. That's a sign that people are misunderstanding that God's in control. It means that if someone's getting stressed, it must mean that when they're putting in effort, they're doing it under a false flag. And here's what I mean by that. The truth is, at least within Judaism, and we'll just spend a small part on this, and then we'll get back to the principles, because I don't want to get too much into Jewish philosophy. Tradition has showed us in our holy works that the only reason we do any personal effort is because of the curse of Adam being thrown out of Eden, that through the sweat of your brow you shall earn your bread. And that basically it's a penalty. In order to get what's coming to you, you need to put effort into it. It is not to create. My efforts don't create. It's an entry fee. That's it. And the vast majority of us, myself included a lot of the time, lose sight of that. And we actually go about our efforts in a way that seems to reveal the fact that we really believe that we're getting it done. And so the principles force us to re-examine our efforts. Even a simple conversation about how love gets created forces us to re-examine how are things really emerging in our realities. The principles reveal that whether you make $1 million or whether you find the theory of relativity or whether you are blessed with a feeling of love, that they are all bestowed via the same three principles of mind, consciousness, and thought. And that why we put any effort in at all is a question that should be, in my mind, re-examined. Because the principles reveal that our efforts actually have never gotten anything done in the first place.
May I ask a question? This is Deborah.
Hi, Deborah.
Hi. This is a totally different topic. And
Sure.
It's not a rhetorical question. I mean, I'm asking this honestly. I've been studying with someone for about 1.5 years now. I've been working with someone on a weekly basis. And I feel like I understand the concept. I understand what you're saying, not always insightfully. But my question to you is, what do you see as the value of continuing to read about this, talk about this, study with someone? I don't want to say once you get it, because that's just intellectual, but how do you see the continual studying and talking and being in groups as being helpful toward insightfully realizing things more often?
Sure. Great question. And I've asked myself that question many, many times. Actually, particularly after the email blast we sent out this week, I got some pointed questions about, well, if we're not getting it done as practitioners or as clients, it's all just gifts. So what's our role? And how much effort should we put into it? And the answer is it's going to be different for everyone. It's going to be what's right for you as to how much you should be exploring this, how often you should be going to classes, or how often you're reading books. It's going to be what's right for you. It's going to be however you think. And that's all I can say for certain about it. Everything else that I say is going to be anecdotal. Well, I've seen, so many people really, really find something solid after 18 months of, consistent learning. Or I've seen someone in 3 hours just wake up from depression and they never look back, and it's now 12 years later. Like, I've seen that happen. And then I've seen people who are seriously immersed in this for 5 years straight, and they're still, bless their heart, suffering terribly. So it's really different for everyone. And there is no right or wrong answer about that. There are certain people who learn this and they take it to heart. They're knocked off their feet with the insight, so to speak, and that their life is just going to be different going forward. And then they go back to living their life with this newfound knowledge. But they don't create institutes and start promoting it all over the world. They just go back and live their life. Other people get really motivated to begin teaching and sharing and promoting and all that kind of stuff. And that's right for them. And then there are other people who feel like occasionally they want to come back and hear again and hear more. Ultimately, the principles or the truth of the principles, because they are infinite in nature, means there is no end to how much I can comprehend and appreciate them. So there's always more. For me personally, the always more has emerged in a way that although I've seen the principles in certain relationships and in certain ways that I relate to myself or to my life, there are still many, many, many areas that it hasn't really occurred to me that I've been limiting what I think is possible for me in this or that scenario. So continuing to learn about it has continuously revealed more and more areas where I've gotten more and more insight, like, oh, the principles apply here too. Oh, it helps me here too. And I found that staying in the conversation, although not necessary, is a powerful way to continue to learn more and more about how relevant it is. And one final point about this. I've found that there are very few people, very few, who are on the level of what I call Toby Waltzers and Sid Bankses and Terry Rubensteins, who have this moment of just the sky opening up and, harps playing in the background kind of moments where their lives are just utterly changed in an instant. It's not even a bell curve. It's more like, it's like this, It's like most people are right here in the middle where there's a slow and gradual change where because the principles are not something, it's not a truth that you can keep in your mind all the time. You're gonna forget. The system allows you to forget that it's there. And so I easily fall into moments where I've forgotten the principles are true and I'm blaming you for how I feel. Having a continual, not forever, but having until you get a real solid appreciation for its truth, it's helpful to stay in contact and continue to get reminded and get centered, at least intellectually, until you kind of hit a certain tipping point where you've kind of hit a new plateau where there are certain scenarios that just don't fool you anymore. That neighbor going on and on and on about who knows what doesn't push your buttons anymore. They're still doing it, but you're beyond it. You've smashed the illusion so much that it doesn't even get to you anymore. There's a certain culmination that I think occurs particularly, and that's particularly important because a lot of people hear that you learn the principles, you get it once, and then you never forget. And that's just not true. Not for me, at least. It's possible, but I don't see it in the vast majority of people that they learn it and never forget it. Just as the principles giveth, the principles taketh away. You can, in the next instant, lose all the knowledge you've gained about the principles, and it's gone. And the world is out to get you, and you have nothing to do with it. So the principles are a way of or having discussions and having groups or partners like you've done. I don't know what your experience was in detail, but I'm sure there was something helpful about that, even though in the beginning you had something very powerfully hit you. But continually having that conversation, whether in groups or one-on-ones, I've seen has been very, very helpful for a great many people. Anyone else? Anyone on the phone? Just press *6. I've got about 10 more minutes, so don't feel shy if you want to bring up a brand new topic. Okay, well, I'm rather pleased with this session. Pleased enough that I will post it on the website as soon as it's formatted properly. So if you feel that there's someone who would benefit from listening to this, or if you want to refer back to something, feel free. Or if you have questions, we have, other than me, there are other people in the Tversky Wellness Institute that are more than happy to available really to work with you. So there's some of the names that come to mind are Basia Friedman, Grifka Krumholtz, Viva Barnett, Yankee, and Esty Raskin, Shaya and Effie Sussman, Rachel Spitz in Brooklyn, and in Milwaukee, Sarah Hoffman. All great, great teachers of the principles. So there's a lot of different voices out there, and I encourage you to reach out to us if you want to get in touch with any of them. And stay tuned to more FAQs sessions coming up in the future. Your feedback is very much appreciated, so please email us and let us know how you think that this could be improved or changed for the better.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, everybody. Good night.
Thank you. Bye.